For early access plus exclusive content, facilitated discussions, live one-on-one Q&As, and more, become a patron at patreon.com/BrucePoinsett. Before that, we also created the Southern Oregon, or created the Southern Oregon Pride Festival. Could you just talk about the story of like how that came together?
Well, listening to you kind of recap like that made me think about coming to Ashland and meeting all these different people and people I knew when we moved here in 2008 that there were queer people here, but nobody really got together and nobody really said anything, and everybody pretty much stayed to themselves. And in 2008, that's when Proposition 8 was in LA, was in California. And we were hoping that Proposition 8 would be turned. And so for equal rights for lesbians or same-sex marriages and equal rights. And so it didn't, it was defeated, because we were hoping that if it would have passed in California, then it would be on the ballot in Oregon and Washington, and could be a West Coast sweep. Well, it wasn't. And at Southern Oregon University, they have a queer resource center, and the queer resource center had these flyers, and they said, yeah, we're going to meet on the plaza and we're going to yay, because everybody was hoping that Proposition 8 would have passed. And so I thought, I'm going to go to the plaza and see all of my people. And I went to the plaza, and it was probably about 8 people there. And I was like, where is everybody? And so that was really interesting. And I was telling my sweetheart and a couple of people that we were there with, I went over and I asked Janelle Wilson, she was with Queer Resource Center at that time, and I said, do we have a pride parade here, or do we have any place where queer folks just get together and gather, or do we have anything? And she told me that I think it was a couple of years prior to that, that a bunch of people got together and they marched down Main Street, on the sidewalk. And I said, so that was it? And she goes, oh yeah, and then we did something in Medford, and we all got together in Medford, and they had an event at the park, and apparently that was pretty well received, and that was good, but it wasn't on a yearly basis. It just kind of happened. And that's when I made up my mind, and I told my partner, I said, we should do a pride parade. And I just had this thought. That was in 2008. And then in 2010, that's when we had our first Southern Oregon Pride Festival, our Pride Parade. And that the night before, we had a kickoff celebration that was off the hook. Our first Grand Marshal was, what the heck is his name? Well, his first name is Bob, and his husband and their 2 sons. They were our Grand Marshals, and it just blew me away, Bruce. I could not believe it. But let me tell you what happened before then. When I went to City Council and I said I wanted to do this, first off, I went to the Chamber of Commerce, because they have a 4th of July parade. So I said, how did you guys do that parade? And the lady there, very forthcoming, very nice. And she told me, boom, boom, boom. And I said, oh, okay. And she asked me why. And I said, because we're going to have a pride parade. And she's like, what's a pride parade? And I said, what's a pride parade? So anyway, I had to tell her what a pride parade was. And then when I told her, her expression kind of changed a little bit. And she said, we've never done that before. And before I told her my intention, she was very forthcoming. And then after I told her, she was like, oh. And I went to City Council and I went to Parks and Recs, because we were going to use the band shell at the park. They were like, no, we don't do that. We've never done that. We don't. And well, everything new has never been done before, right? So we're going to do something new that's never been done before. And that was my first kind of introduction to local government. And it was, and it still is. No, we've never done that before. We don't
Mhm.
do that. And so I am myself, and I just continue to be persistent and keep it moving. And even when getting the people who live here on board to be in the parade and march in the parade, people were so enthusiastic. People were excited. They came from Redding, California. They came from Wairika, they came from Salem, Eugene. I was just, whoa, Sisters, Oregon. I never even heard of a Sisters, Oregon. They came from everywhere to come to little bitty Ashland and descend on this community. And that was so fulfilling for me. And something that we wanted to do, we do what we call pride hopping, because I don't want to be responsible for anybody's drinking. So I'm like, go into all the bars and restaurants, and drink to your heart's delight. And when I went to the bars and the restaurants and the retail stores and the bookstores, I'm like, everybody, come on, let's get on board and let's have some fun with this. A lot of people the first year, they didn't want our posters, they didn't want our flyers, they didn't want to get on board. And that really, I didn't get it, you know. And then I'll never forget the first parade that we had that day. I was, you know, walking with the parade to make sure we stayed in pace and keep people on check. And I would walk by shops and I would see their own makeshift Southern Oregon Pride, and we support Pride. And I was like, oh, okay, they get it now. You know, they saw the people coming, they felt the energy, and and now everybody digs it. So Gina, we're gonna do this again, right? So it's now it's a good thing. It was then too. They just didn't know it.
Yeah, you're being very generous saying they saw the energy. The cynic in me says they saw the money, but
That too.
you know, but that's still, I mean, it's just, you know, there's all these constant examples of just, you know, one, creating something that wasn't there, but then you talk about people coming from Northern California, people coming from Sisters, people coming from Salem, et cetera, et cetera. Just like how no one, if nothing else, could see, wait, this is an event. Wait, this is a tourist attraction. This is all these things. Like, why would we not do this? But, you know.
And something that I did too, because you were down here, you got the feel of how small it is. And in June is typically Pride Month because of Stonewall in 1969. But here in Ashland, June is inundated with tourists and graduation from the university. And so there's so many things going on. And my background, my work history is in tour and travel. And so I thought, you know what, let's pick right before we start to go off season. I wanted to think of what would be a good month, and October is National Coming Out Month. So I thought, October, we will celebrate Pride in October. So the second weekend every year in October is Pride weekend.
Oh.
Yeah, so we get a chance to celebrate twice. We do our little thing in June, but then we really celebrate in October.